So let's talk about early 2026. While most of us were looking the other way, focused on other things, something huge happened, almost silently. It was a geopolitical shift so subtle, yet so incredibly profound, that some analysts believe it has completely rewritten the balance of global power. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how they say it went down. The analysis we're digging into kicks off with this really powerful quote. It sets the stage for what it describes as a masterclass in modern strategy. It's not a picture of loud conflict, but of shrewd, quiet moves, almost like building a new world order, one piece at a time. So that really is the big question, isn't it? What did China actually do on the Korean Peninsula in 2026? How could a few seemingly routine logistical and diplomatic moves add up to what our source material is calling this undeniable strategic victory for Beijing? Well, let's break it all down. Just look at this headline for a moment from South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. China-North Korea thaw gathers pace as Kim Jong-un says ties have reached a new level. The North Korean leader met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang in Pyongyang on Friday as the two sides pledged further practical cooperation. With that said, let's go straight to the intro. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the physical connections, the steel arteries. Then we'll dive into the diplomacy, the architect of peace, before we uncover this crucial policy change they call the Great Omission. After that, we'll see the economic boom it kicked off, the engine of the future. And finally, we'll connect the dots to see how it all fits into a new multipolar axis. All right, so where does this story even begin? Well, it starts with something real, something you can actually see and touch, the complete reopening of transport links. After 6 long years of pandemic-era quiet, the border between China and North Korea didn't just reopen. According to our sources, it roared back to life. And what's crazy is just how fast this all happened. On March 12th, the international train started running again, and the first tickets reportedly sold out in hours. Just a couple of weeks later, boom. Air China's back in the skies. With the roads already open, that was it. The connection was fully restored for the first time since 2020. And look, this wasn't just for show. The details tell a much bigger story. I mean, sure, you've got the multiple weekly flights and the main train line, but look at that last row, a daily feeder service. That's not for tourists, that's for moving technicians and materials. That's the lifeblood of major industrial cooperation. And you really can't overstate how important this is. That one rail corridor, it used to carry a staggering 60% of all overland trade between the two countries. Bringing it back online wasn't just a nice to have, it was a calculated economic move. It gave Chinese companies a stable, cheap way to move goods, way better than relying on unpredictable air freight. Okay, so trains and planes are one thing. They're just the tools, right? The real story, the sources tell us, is in the high-stakes diplomacy that was happening behind the scenes. So what was the big idea, the grand strategy behind reconnecting these steel arteries? And then we get to this pivotal moment in April 2026. China's top diplomat, Wang hops on a plane to Pyongyang. It's his first visit in more than 6 years. Officially, the reason was strategic coordination. But the timing was everything. This was China shoring up at the alliance, basically setting the stage for the entire region before any big meetings with the US. So according to the analysis, this was just a massive diplomatic win. China basically reminded everyone that it's the indispensable power broker on the peninsula. It cemented its role as the essential back channel, meaning any future talks between Washington and Pyongyang, well, they'd have to go through Beijing first. And in return, China bought full-throated public support from North Korea on its most sensitive political issues. Okay, now we're getting to the absolute heart of this whole strategy. It's something the sources are calling the Great Omission. It's this incredibly subtle but powerful change in language, a change that completely rewrote the rulebook. So what is it exactly? Well, the Great Omission is the quiet, deliberate choice by Beijing to just stop talking about denuclearization and its official statements on North Korea. For decades, that was the standard line. To suddenly have it disappear, that's a huge signal. It's a seismic policy shift, and it had immediate powerful effects. And when you put the old and new approaches side by side, the difference is just night and day. The old way, CVID, was this all-or-nothing goal that the sources call a wish fulfillment policy. It just led to endless standoffs. The new Chinese approach? It's pure pragmatism. It's accepting reality on the ground and shifting from disarmaments to risk management. It's China basically saying, let's be the adults in the room here. You know, this diplomatic shift wasn't just some abstract idea. No, it had immediate real-world economic results. By basically removing a major point of conflict from the table, China swung the floodgates wide open for trade and cooperation. And the numbers, well, they speak for themselves. Chinese exports to North Korea shot up to $2.3 billion in 2026. And that's not just bouncing back from the pandemic. That's a 6-year high. It's the direct economic payoff of this brand new diplomatic playbook. And this wasn't just one thing. We're talking about a whole range of activities. You've got contract manufacturing making a comeback, Chinese firms providing raw materials and technicians for North Korea's own development projects. And then there's the huge untapped potential of tourism. It's on hold for now, but they're laying the groundwork to bring back the 350,000 Chinese tourists who used to visit every single year. So all of this, it's all building towards something much, much bigger. This isn't just about China and North Korea. The analysis we're looking at positions this new revitalized friendship as a key piece in a much larger global puzzle, a major geopolitical realignment. And maybe the clearest sign of this new alignment is how Pyongyang got on board with President Xi's 4 big global initiatives on development, security, civilization, and governance. That's not just being polite, that's North Korea publicly signing on hook, line, and sinker to a vision of the world led by China. This is where the analysis gives this new bloc a name, the CRNK axis: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. In this view, China is the anchor, the economic and diplomatic heavyweight, while the other members play their own parts. And this refreshed alliance with Pyongyang, it solidifies that bloc right in Northeast Asia. And that really brings us to the final powerful takeaway from the analysis we've been looking at. The argument is that through all these calculated moves, logistical, diplomatic, economic, China has basically graduated from being just a major actor to being the one who sets the stage and, well, directs the entire play, at least in its part of the world. So that leaves us with one last massive question. The analysis presents this great omission as a brilliant act of pragmatic leadership. But by accepting and normalizing a nuclear reality, is it a smart way to manage risk, or is it a dangerous gamble with the future of global security? That right there is the question we're left to think about.